Do you remember National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989? It looked like pure holiday chaos, but for its cast, real life turned out to be far more unforgiving. From Oscar nominations to exile, illness, and death, they walked paths no scriptwriter could ever invent. Stay with us, because their then and now journey is nothing like the movie you remember. Chevy Chase as Clark Griswold. Clark Griswold, the anxious, relentlessly hopeful father in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was portrayed by Chevy Chase. At 46 years old, he embodied a man chasing the perfect holiday while everything collapses around him. The performance felt loose and explosive, yet tightly controlled. It would become the most enduring image of his career. Cornelius Crane Chevy Chase was born on October 8, 1943 in New York City, and by the late 1980s, he was already carrying enormous professional strain. After conquering television with Saturday Night Live and dominating cinema through films like Caddyshack and Fletch, the pressure to remain the definitive face of American comedy became suffocating. Studios expected repeat performances of the same persona, while critics began sharpening their knives. Box office failures in the early 1990s damaged his standing, and Chase found himself blamed not just for bad films, but for an industry moving on without him. That professional stress bled directly into his body. Years of physical comedy caused chronic pain, leading to prescription medication dependence long before the topic was openly discussed in Hollywood. In 1981, while filming Modern Problems, he was nearly killed by electrocution on set, an incident that left lingering physical damage. Decades later, in 2021, Chase suffered heart failure and spent 8 days in a medically induced coma. The man once known for pratfalls was suddenly struggling simply to recover, confronting mortality after a lifetime of outrunning it. Despite declining health, Chase continued working in measured bursts before 2026. He returned to mainstream attention through Community. He appeared in Hot Tub Time Machine and later projects like The Last Laugh and The Christmas Letter, choosing roles that required less physical strain but carried emotional weight. Each appearance felt less like a comeback and more like a controlled goodbye. In 2026, Chevy Chase is 83 years old. He lives largely out of the spotlight, semi-retired, focusing on painting, family, and quiet recovery rather than performance. With an estimated net worth of $50 million, his career is financially secure, but emotionally marked by survival rather than triumph, a reminder that even laughter can come at a heavy cost. Beverly D'Angelo as Ellen Griswold. Ellen Griswold, the calm, emotionally grounded mother in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was portrayed by Beverly D'Angelo. At 38 years old, she delivered a performance built on restraint rather than spectacle. Her presence steadied the chaos around her. It became the role audiences never forgot, and the one the industry never let her outgrow. Beverly Heather D'Angelo was born on November 15, 1951, in Columbus, Ohio, and her career unfolded under constant tension between talent and limitation. Despite earning acclaim for Coal Miner's Daughter and proving her range across stage and screen, she was repeatedly confined to supporting roles as Hollywood narrowed its expectations. Ageism arrived early and stayed late. Even as she continued working in projects like American History X and Entourage, opportunities demanded reinvention rather than growth, forcing her to fight for relevance while others were handed longevity. That fight took a physical toll. Vocal strain, once her strength, became a vulnerability, limiting the kind of roles she could accept. Exhaustion accumulated quietly as she balanced film, television, and voice work, often without the security granted to male counterparts. Health concerns pushed her toward a more disciplined lifestyle, forcing her to slow down in an industry that rarely pauses for anyone. Later, D'Angelo continued working steadily, though selectively. She appeared in series such as Mom and Shooter and returned to the holiday genre in Violent Night, demonstrating resilience rather than nostalgia. She also remained active in voice acting, including returns to The Simpsons, choosing projects that respected her experience instead of exploiting it. In 2026, Beverly D'Angelo is 75 years old. She remains professionally active on her own terms, balancing creative work with personal well-being. With an estimated net worth of $20 million, her legacy is not defined by dominance, but by endurance. Randy Quaid as Cousin Eddie. Cousin Eddie, the loud, reckless, unforgettable relative in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was portrayed by Randy Quaid. At 39 years old, he turned excess into comedy and chaos into a caricature of American dysfunction. The role looked outrageous, almost cartoonish. In hindsight, it was disturbingly close to what his real life would become. Randy. Randall Rudy Quaid was born on October 1st, 1950 in Houston, Texas, and his career began with rare seriousness and promise. Early acclaim from The Last Detail, which earned him Oscar, BAFTA, and Golden Globe nominations, marked him as a dramatic actor of depth, not a clown. Yet as the years passed, Hollywood slowly pushed him toward extremes, rewarding exaggeration over nuance. Even after powerful work in Independence Day and Brokeback Mountain, his professional footing weakened. Lawsuits, studio conflicts, and public outbursts began to eclipse the performances themselves, leaving his talent overshadowed by controversy. The collapse was not just professional, it became physical and psychological. As legal battles multiplied, stress consumed his health. Extended periods of instability, paranoia, and exhaustion drained him, while years away from steady work compounded isolation. By the early 2000s, Quaid was effectively cut off from the industry. His career stalled not by lack of ability, but by circumstances spiraling out of control. Health concerns related to prolonged stress and imbalance followed, turning survival into a daily effort rather than a creative pursuit. However, Quaid attempted a fragile return. He reappeared in smaller projects like All You Can Eat and publicly reflected on his past, often framing himself as both survivor and exile. These appearances were sporadic, cautious, and tinged with defiance. In 2026, Randy Quaid is 76 years old. He remains alive, living quietly after years of instability, with limited public work and a reputation forever divided. His estimated net worth stands at approximately $1 million, a stark contrast to his early success. Miriam Flynn as Cousin Catherine, the gentle, loyal wife amid chaos in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was portrayed by Miriam Flynn. At 38 years old, she brought warmth to a household defined by noise and excess. Her performance was subtle, steady, and human. It made the madness feel real. Miriam Flynn was born on June 18, 1951, in Cleveland, Ohio, and her path into entertainment was built through discipline rather than spotlight. Transitioning from the intense improv world of Second City to film and television came with constant uncertainty. While peers broke through into stardom, Flynn was often confined to supporting roles, praised for reliability but rarely rewarded with visibility. Even after becoming a familiar face in the Vacation films, she navigated an industry that valued her presence but withheld prominence. The strain of that imbalance lingered. Balancing live performance, television schedules, and later voice work demanded endurance, not glamour. While others chased reinvention, Flynn adapted quietly, shifting into animation and long-running voice roles. The work was steady, but the effort invisible, requiring vocal discipline and physical stamina that took their toll over time. But Flynn continued contributing consistently rather than loudly. She remained deeply involved in voice acting, most notably as Grandma Longneck in the Land Before Time franchise and in series such as Family Guy and Ben 10. She also returned occasionally to live-action roles, choosing projects carefully while dedicating increasing time to yoga, education-focused volunteering, and mentoring younger performers navigating the same uncertain paths she once faced. In 2026, Miriam Flynn is 75 years old. She is still active, primarily in voice work, living a balanced life between creativity and service. With an estimated net worth of $5 million, her career reflects quiet durability rather than spectacle. Juliette Lewis as Audrey Griswold. Audrey Griswold, the sharp-tongued, rebellious teenage daughter in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was portrayed by Juliette Lewis. At 16 years old, she carried the restless energy of a young woman already questioning the world around her. Her sarcasm felt natural, almost lived in. It was an early signal that she was never meant to play safe characters. Juliette Lake Lewis was born on June 21, 1973, in Los Angeles, California, and her career unfolded under relentless pressure from the start. Growing up inside Hollywood meant opportunity came early, but so did judgment. After Christmas Vacation, she was drawn into darker, riskier material, delivering raw performances in Cape Fear and later Natural Born Killers. These roles brought acclaim and an Oscar nomination, but they also marked her as volatile and difficult. That intensity came at a personal cost. Fame arrived before emotional stability, and Lewis openly struggled with addiction and mental health crises in her early adulthood. The psychological weight of roles like The Basketball Diaries and Strange Days blurred the line between performance and survival. Recovery was slow and isolating, forcing her to step away from the spotlight and rebuild her life through sobriety, physical discipline, and spiritual grounding. Rather than soften, she redirected her energy. She poured herself into music, forming Juliette and the Licks, and later releasing solo work such as Future Deep. On screen, she continued choosing emotionally punishing roles: August, Osage County, Ma, and most powerfully Yellow Jackets. These performances felt less like acting and more like her confession in real life. In 2026, Juliette Lewis is 53 years old. She remains fiercely active across film, television, and music, protective of her sobriety and independence. With an estimated net worth of $5 million, her legacy is not comfort or stability, but survival, shaped by early exposure, hard consequences, and an unyielding refusal to disappear. Johnny Galecki as Rusty Griswold. Rusty Griswold, the awkward, observant son in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was portrayed by Johnny Galecki. At 14 years old, he brought quiet realism to a family drowning in chaos. His performance was understated, almost fragile. Few imagined how far he would travel from that boyish role. John Mark Galecki was born on April 30, 1975, in Brie, Belgium, and his early career was shaped by displacement and pressure. Moving from Europe to the United States, he entered acting young, navigating adult expectations without emotional armor. After Christmas Vacation, he struggled to transition from child actor to serious performer, finding temporary stability on Roseanne. Even then, typecasting loomed, and the fear of being trapped in youth roles never fully left him. The strain he carried was largely internal. Years of visibility created anxiety about relevance once Roseanne ended, leading to a stretch of uneven film work and uncertainty. When The Big Bang Theory arrived, it solved one problem and created another: sudden global fame, relentless schedules, and the pressure of sustaining one of television's most successful sitcoms for over a decade. As that chapter closed, Galecki deliberately shifted his relationship with fame. He moved behind the camera, helping shape projects like Young Sheldon, and reduced his on-screen presence. Appearances in The Conners felt reflective rather than ambitious, as he chose distance, privacy, and control over constant exposure. In 2026, Johnny Galecki is 51 years old. He lives a quieter, more grounded life, balancing selective creative work with long stretches away from Hollywood. With an estimated net worth of $100 million, his story is not about burning out, but about knowing when to step back. Diane Ladd as Nora Griswold. Nora Griswold, the sharp-tongued, fast-talking mother in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was portrayed by Diane Ladd. At 54 years old, she walked into the chaos like a spark in dry air, turning ordinary family tension into something electric, funny, and slightly dangerous. And somehow, that made the character feel painfully real. Rose Diane Ladner, born November 29, 1935 in Laurel, Mississippi, carried a kind of Southern grit. For decades, she had to fight the quiet cruelty of being too much for one role and not enough for the next, trapped between typecasting and invisibility. Even after earning major respect through work connected to films like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, 1974, and later Wild at Heart, 1990, the pressure mutated into the exhausting burden of proving. Then the body began to betray what the talent never did. In her later years, Diane faced serious lung-related illness that steadily tightened life into smaller breaths and smaller days, the kind of decline that doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but feels brutal from the inside. Reports about her death later confirmed respiratory failure tied to oxygen deprivation, a devastating end for someone whose entire career depended on voice, timing, and breath. Even while time was closing in, she kept reaching for work that mattered. She still appeared in projects that reminded people she never left. She only became rarer. Films like Joy, 2015, and later appearances into the 2020s, including her final screen work in 2022. Diane Ladd died at 89 on November 23, 2025, at her home in Ojai, California, with the cause reported as hypoxic respiratory failure. She was taken by something quieter and crueler, the body running out of oxygen. Her reported net worth was often cited around $10 million, built over a lifetime of relentless acting work that outlasted fashions, studios, and entire eras. John Randolph as Clark Griswold Sr. Clark Griswold Sr., the grumpy but strangely tender father in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation in 1989, was played by John Randolph. At 74 years old, he brought a tired authority to the family table, like a man who'd seen too much, said too little, and didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. His comedy was clipped, stern, and cutting in a way that made the warmth underneath feel earned. Every line landed like it had decades behind it. Born June 1, 1915, in New York City, his full name was Emanuel Hirsch Cohen, and the struggle that shaped him wasn't just artistic. It was political and career-threatening. He lived through an era where the wrong accusation could flatten a life, and when the Hollywood blacklist tightened in the 1950s, it ripped years away. Roles dried up, reputations curdled, and the silence around him was punishment. Health-wise, there was no flashy headline, just the reality of time doing what time does. The final stretch of life for a man born in 1915 is often a private negotiation with limits, less strength, more fatigue, and the quiet medical routine that creeps in when the spotlight is gone. His decline was simply the long human ending that even the strongest careers can't escape. And still, he worked. John Randolph kept acting deep into his later years, appearing across film, television, and stage with the kind of reliability that makes an industry forget what you endured to remain standing. He had performances people still point to, like Serpico, 1973, and on stage he achieved a peak that many never touch, winning a Tony Award for Broadway Bound. John Randolph died at 88 on February 24, 2004, in Hollywood. Many estimates have placed his net worth around $5 million, built not through overnight fame, but through decades of work. Doris Roberts as Frances Smith. Frances Smith, the distracted, blunt, unintentionally hilarious mother of Ellen in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, was portrayed by Doris Roberts. At 64 years old, she delivered comedy through confusion rather than punchlines. It was the kind of performance that only decades of survival could make effortless. Born November 4, 1925 in St. Louis, Missouri, Doris Roberts did not arrive in Hollywood early, fast, or favored. Her career began slowly, painfully, in off-Broadway spaces where recognition came late and money came rarely. While others aged out, she aged in, grinding through bit roles, guest spots, and thankless television appearances. Even respected work on Remington Steele did not guarantee stability. Success stayed just far enough away to keep pressure constant and doubt alive. The breakthrough that changed everything also came with its own cost. Everybody Loves Raymond turned her into a global icon in her 70s, winning 5 Emmy Awards. But the workload was punishing. Long taping days, relentless travel, and the physical demand of comedy strained a body already carrying years of fatigue. Behind the sharp insults and perfect timing, she was managing chronic health issues that rarely made headlines. In her final years, Roberts continued working because stopping felt like surrender. She appeared in projects like The Middle and Medea's Witness Protection, while also dedicating time to animal rights activism and AIDS charities. Even as her health declined, she remained publicly generous, mentoring younger performers and funding causes that mattered to her long after cameras stopped rolling. Doris Roberts died at 90 on April 17, 2016, in Los Angeles, after suffering a stroke, following years of cardiovascular and pulmonary complications. She was laid to rest at Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park. Her estimated net worth of $14 million reflected not early stardom, but endurance, earned late, spent generously, and remembered warmly. E.G. Marshall as Art Smith. Art Smith, the calm, authoritative father of Ellen in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, was played by E.G. Marshall. At 75 years old, his presence brought restraint and gravity to a room full of chaos. He didn't chase laughs. He anchored them. Every line felt measured, like it had survived decades before reaching the screen. Born June 18, 1914, in Owatonna, Minnesota, Marshall's career was scarred early by forces far larger than talent. During the 1950s, he was swept into the Hollywood blacklist, a professional exile that froze opportunities and erased momentum. Years passed where survival meant stage work, radio, and silence. Returning to film was not a comeback. It was a slow reclaiming of dignity. That reclaiming came through discipline, not reinvention. His work in 12 Angry Men and later television dominance in The Defenders proved he had lost nothing. 2 Emmy Awards restored credibility, not lost years. Even so, the weight of interruption followed him, shaping a career defined by precision rather than abundance. Marshall continued working into his 80s, choosing roles that matched his gravitas rather than chasing visibility. Films like Absolute Power and Nixon reflected a performer who understood power, restraint, and consequence, on screen and off. His voice also became iconic through CBS Radio Mystery Theater, where calm narration replaced spectacle. E.G. Marshall died at 84 on August 24, 1998, at his home in Bedford, New York, from lung cancer. He was remembered as a craftsman more than a star. His estimated net worth of $5 million came not from excess, but from consistency, earned after surviving erasure and kept through quiet persistence. William Hickey as Uncle Lewis. Uncle Lewis, the explosive, loud-mouthed relative in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, was portrayed by William Hickey. At 62 years old, he turned every line into controlled chaos. His raspy voice and exaggerated reactions made Uncle Lewis feel half unhinged, half immortal. It was comedy sharpened by age and exhaustion. William Edward Hickey, born September 19, 1927, in Brooklyn, New York, did not arrive at fame early. For decades, he hovered on the margins, radio, stage, teaching, while younger actors surged ahead. His look was unconventional, his voice abrasive, and Hollywood rarely rewards either. Roles came slowly, often as oddities or background presences, until his unsettling brilliance finally broke through in Preezy's Honor, 1985, earning him an Oscar nomination that arrived astonishingly late in life. That late recognition did not ease the strain on his body. Hickey spent years battling respiratory illness, the kind that creeps rather than strikes. Emphysema and chronic bronchitis slowly robbed him of breath, energy, and endurance. Ironically, the voice that made him unforgettable, the cracked, metallic rasp, was shaped by the very lungs that were failing him. Still, he worked. Even as his health deteriorated, Hickey delivered unforgettable performances, including the voice of Dr. Finkelstein in The Nightmare Before Christmas, a role that turned fragility into eerie authority. His final years were spent balancing teaching, selective film roles, and persistent illness, never fully stepping away because acting was not a career, it was survival. William Hickey died at 69 on June 29, 1997, from complications of emphysema and bronchitis. He was buried at Cemetery of the Evergreens in Brooklyn. His estimated $5 million net worth came not from stardom, but from endurance, decades of acting and teaching that outlasted the industry's patience. 37 years later, the laughter still echoes, but the lives behind it tell a far deeper story. Some found late triumph, others faced quiet battles, and a few left us far too soon, turning a holiday comedy into a time capsule of fragile human lives. So which transformation shocked you the most, and which loss hit the hardest? If this story moved you, subscribe, like, and comment below to keep these legacies alive, and join us for more unforgettable cast journeys.